Yes, Disha, we can begin now. Disha, your mic is mute.
Am I audible now?
Yes, we can begin.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am Disha, a member of the IEEE Exicom, and I welcome each one of you on behalf of the IEEE team. We are extremely happy to see such an enthusiastic participation of each one of you for this event. The topic for today's webinar is what makes a website look professional, and also a little bit about GitHub, which will further definitely help you in the competition. And for this, we have a very well educated, a highly qualified, and a very experienced professor, Gajendra Deshpande, sir, from the CS department. A warm welcome to you, sir, for this session. Before we begin with this session, let me brief you all with the rules and information related to the website competition. As told before, the team size must be minimum of 2 and a maximum of 3. A Google form will be circulated to collect the information about the team members. Note, a WhatsApp link will be attached to the Google form, and only the team leader is supposed to join the WhatsApp group created. The theme, the rules regarded to the competition and the judging criteria will be circulated in that WhatsApp group created. Another Google form will be circulated in order to submit the link of the website, which will be hosted by you on the GitHub account. That's it for now. We will send the further information on the WhatsApp group. I request Gajendra sir to kindly take over.
Yeah, thank you, Disha. Am I audible?
Yes, sir,
Yes,
you are
sir.
audible.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, audible.
Okay, is my PPT visible?
No, sir. Yes, sir,
Visible now, sir.
yes, sir, it's visible now.
Yes, sir.
Now it's
People,
visible? Yeah.
yes, people have to pin it.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
I thank IEEE Student Branch IIT for giving me an opportunity to speak on website designing. Yeah, in this today's webinar, I'll be giving you some guidelines regarding website design and what makes it look professional. So today we will cover some basic concepts in brief. Then I'll start with the guidelines for different aspects. For example, how to choose fonts, how to choose layouts, how you can select different colors, and so on. So World Wide Web. It was invented by British scientist Tim Berners-Lee while he was working at CERN, that is the European Nuclear Research Organization, in 1989. So he designed world's first website. So he is known as father of web. So you can see here there is a small screenshot. This is nothing but the screenshot of the recreated page of the first website. And if you want to visit, if you want to browse the world's first website, I have given the link below here. That is info.cern.ch/hypertext slash www slash the project.html. So you can visit this URL and you can have a look on how the world's first website looked like. So it's a very basic website. You will not find any aesthetics on it. So it's just the collection of links. So basically, when Tim Berners-Lee was working at CERN, there were lots of documents, and there was a lot of effort and time was wasting in accessing those documents. So he took up this project and he created a project where he linked all the documents at CERN. So in just click of a button, they used to access the information. Now there is one more link which I have given on this slide, that is W3 website, www.w3.org website. It's a standards website. Whatever you see on the web, so related to different technologies on the web, all those content have to be standardized. So this body standardizes HTML or JavaScript or different technologies related to web technology. Say for example, let's assume that you have created a web page using HTML and you want to check whether your web page conforms to particular standard. So there are various standards in HTML, HTML 4.01, transitional, HTML 4.01, strict DTD, then HTML5, then XHTML, XML. There are so many standards. So whatever code you have written, so if you want to test whether it conforms to particular standard, then you can go to the validators on this website and you can specify the URL, or you can paste the code, or you can upload a file and you can check. So that tool will tell you whether your code conforms to particular standard. Similarly, there is a JavaScript validator, CSS validators, and there are very useful tutorials, and you will also come to know what work is going on with respect to the recent technologies. For example, you might have heard of Internet of Things. When you connect Internet of Things to web, it will become Web of Things, right? So what work is going on related to Web of Things? If you want to know, you can visit this site. If you want to know the work going on related to automotive, this with respect to web, yes, information is available on this website. So when we say web, it is not just web pages. There are lots of technologies and a lot of work is going on. And if you want to know about all those things, then you can visit w3.org website. Then next, I would like to suggest you to read these two books. That is The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, and second one is Don't Make Me Think, Revisited by Steve Krug. So these two are very effective books, and these will give you lots of guidelines with examples regarding the website design. So how the font should be, how the layout should be, how to design search box, where to place the elements. So regarding all those things, guidelines are there in these two books. So at least the soft copy is available of Don't Make Me Think Revisited. If you just Google, you will get the soft copy. You can read it. It's a very famous book related to usability guide, especially web and mobile usability guide. So you can download the soft copy from the internet and you can read it. It's a very useful book. So I have also picked few points from this book. Apart from that, some more things I have added from my experience. Okay. Now, basic concepts. Let's first see what is a web page. Web page is nothing but the HTML document which is linked to World Wide Web. Okay. Then what is a website? Website is collection of web pages which can be accessed through internet. Then there is a concept of called as hyperlinks. So when I say hyperlinks, there are different types of hyperlinks. For example, when a hyperlink is a special section, it may be a text, it may be an image, it may be video or audio. When you click on it, it will take you to the appropriate resource. If it is a hypertext, then it is a special text which is clickable text. When you click on that text, it will take you to the new page or the appropriate page. Similarly, we can call something as hyper image. So that means you can make image as hyperlink. When you click on image, it will take you to the different web page, or it may open a small window. We can call it as a modal dialog box. So similarly, you can also link audio or video. So together we can call it as hypermedia. So in general, you can call it as hyperlink. Then next is URL and URI. So URL and URI, these are the concepts which are related to the World Wide Web. So when I say World Wide Web, it is a large network of websites where you can access the information with the help of URL using internet. So URL is nothing but Uniform Resource Locator. URI stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. So there's a difference between URL and URI. So generally we deal with URLs. That means your URL starts with a protocol, HTTP or HTTPS, and ends with a file name. Okay. So say index.html or index.php or index.asp. Even though you are not seeing the file there, by default, index.html or index.php file gets executed. So only thing is it is not visible. But you, on the server side, you can change the default file. But every document root on the server or your website folder, whenever you are creating a website, you should have at least one index file. So you should have one index file, that is compulsory. So when you have index file, when you type the URL, index file will be loaded first. So that means index file is nothing but your home page. Okay. Yeah, so you should have index file, that is compulsory. But what you can also do is, if you don't want the default settings, then you can have a different file, but you need to change the configuration in the server. And whenever somebody types the URL of a website, that particular page gets loaded first. Then okay, when I say URI is Uniform Resource Identifier. So URL is a subset of URI. Okay. When we say URL, you are mostly linking to only files. It may be a HTML file, PHP file, or image file, or audio file, or a video file. But when I say URI, it is not necessarily the file. Okay, it may be to some object also. Okay, so URL, you can consider it as subset of URI. But in URI, you can have more types of files. You can have objects. You can have different types of files such as DTDs, which can be linked. The next, web browser. The official name of web browser is user agent. Okay, so if you read the documentation of w3.org, they don't use the term web browser. They use the term user agent. So user agents are nothing but your web browsers. There are different types of web browsers. We'll see when we reach to that particular point. Then web server. Web server is again a software. Note here that when we say server, it's not the hardware. It's a program. So your browser is a program. Server is also a program. Of course, we need appropriate hardware depending on the requirements. But server is a software. Now, basically, you take any website, it follows client server architecture. That means your client requests for a particular page or particular resource. Your server checks whether that particular resource is available. If it is available, then it will return that page or a service or a information. If it is not available, then it will generate the error message. Okay. So here your web browser is a client, web server is a server. Now, when we consider client server architecture, then there are only two tiers. But you take any modern web application, it is nowadays n-tier application. So n-tier means those many layers or components are there. For example, if you are designing an e-commerce website, then you have a web browser through which you are going to access that site. Then you have a server from which you are going to serve the web pages. Then there will be a third layer called as database, where all the database will be stored. Then next, there will be a e-commerce payment gateway component. That's the fourth tier. Then there are some more tiers like bank or courier agencies or shipping agencies. So there are many tiers now with respect to modern applications. So after 3 tier, we start referring all those applications as n-tier applications. The next is single page and multi-page applications. Now for small applications, single page applications are becoming very popular now. That means you are going to just create a single page, and at the top of the web page, you are going to have few links. When you click on the link, it will take you to the appropriate section within the same page. And when you're clicking, note here that, or even when you're scrolling, the sticky bar, it sticks at the top. It's not going to disappear. So that's a single page application. So single page applications are suitable for mostly events or small business or startups which have just started and which are offering very limited services. The next is multi-page applications. So multi-page applications are suitable for medium to large organizations or which are providing variety of services. For example, you can take our college website. So it's a multi-page application. The next is static and dynamic websites. So when I say static, all the content will be served locally. That means there is no dynamic content. Nothing changes with user interaction. So whatever may be the user interaction, there going to be same content. So in static applications or in static websites, there will be limited user interaction. So what user does is he just clicks on a link, he views the content or just scrolls down. Just limited functionality will be there. But when you say dynamic websites, in dynamic websites, the content will be served from the database. Based on the user interaction, content will be formed and it will be presented to the user. Let's say, for example, your search application. Okay, so let's say, for example, I want to search something on GID.edu website. So I will go to the search section. I will specify the query, whatever I want. Maybe I want to know about department, or maybe I want to know about some student branches like IEEE, or I want to know about particular faculty. I'll enter the details there and I'll click on search. So when I click on search, so based on my query, dynamic web page will be constructed and it will be presented to me. So that's a dynamic website. So for designing dynamic websites or for developing dynamic websites, you need to know many technologies. Say you should be aware of even server-side technologies and databases. But for designing a static website, you just need to know the client-side technologies like HTML, JavaScript, CSS is enough. But when you want to design dynamic websites, you also need to know about databases like Oracle or MySQL or DB2 and so on. You also need to know about server-side programming languages like ASP or Java Server Pages or PHP, Python or Perl, etc. So it depends on which kind of application you want to design. Then next, nowadays, if you see, you are going to see these two keywords very common. For example, responsive. So when I say my website is responsive, that means it works on all devices without worrying much about the screen sizes. For example, the website will work fine on my laptop, my desktop, my mobile phone or my tablet. So here screen size doesn't matter. Whatever may be my screen size, content gets adjusted to that screen size and it will be displayed. Then next is retina ready. When I say retina ready, basically it's high resolution content. You can consider image. So image can also be high resolution, or whatever content or font, whatever you choose, it will be high resolution. So when I say high resolution or when I say retina ready means I will not be able to distinguish between the pixels. So individual pixels will not be visible. So that is the meaning of high resolution or retina ready content. So whenever you are designing a website, you should first identify the theme, or you should know about the theme or the domain. For example, I want to visit or I want to build a website for my college. So when we start visualizing the website, then there are two options here. For example, you can see uh, there are two viewpoints. We can't just design a website just by just based on our assumptions. We need to see what our user wants. If we make our assumptions, if we say that okay, these things are good, then we will be on the left side of the circle. Say for example, things on the front page of any university website. You visit any website, including our college website, you have a campus photo slideshow, then you have also link for alumni, then you have promotions for campus events, that right, you have press releases, then you have a statement of school's philosophy, right, vision, mission, quality policy, right, then you have a message from the principal or chairman, and so on, even links to social media. But when you look at the right side of the circle, our visitors are not interested in these things. Our visitors are interested in things like list of faculty phone numbers and email IDs, campus address, then various kinds of application forms, then academic calendar, various contact details, then departments or course lists, right? Then information about the campus. So here there's a difference. So in first view, we are building the website based on our assumptions. But in second approach, we should make a survey. Who are our customers and what are the common things they are looking for on the website or they look for on the website. So based on the second approach, if you design a website, then it will be useful for the visitors of the website. Of course, the best approach will be combine both and design the website. Okay. Now I will start giving you a few guidelines with respect to the different elements of a website. When we say website, we have different elements like font, then layouts, then tables, then colors, right? Then navigation, then the content of the website, and so on. Now, the first aspect is font. Now, when we are selecting a font, we just can't select any font. I can't select a font because I like it, or you can't uh, choose a font just because your client specifies it. Okay, so you need to again see who are your clients. Let's say, for example, if you are designing a website for kids, or say kindergarten school or pediatric dentist website, then in that case you can go for Comic Sans font because that attracts kids. So I can't use their more formal fonts like Times New Roman or Arial. So similarly, if I'm writing a research article, then I must stick to the font such as Times New Roman or Arial. There I can't make use of Comic Sans font. Okay, so it depends on the context. You should see for whom you are designing a website, and based on that you should see appropriate fonts. So there are standards. So those standards may not be written, but you can just make a survey. What kinds of fonts have been used for what kinds of websites? What kinds of colors have been used for what kinds of websites? So you can make a survey, you can visit few websites, you will come to know. Then based on that, you can start planning your website. Now, when I say font families, there are 5 basic types of fonts. One is serif, sans serif, monospace, cursive, and fantasy. Okay. Now note here that I have also listed some standard fonts in each of these font families. Now I have listed only Latin fonts in each of the font family. So whenever you are writing a code in CSS file, you are going to specify a font family property. There you need to specify multiple fonts separated by comma. Note here that this is very, very important. When you are specifying multiple fonts, you should not choose fonts from the same family. Instead, you choose 5 fonts or at least 3 to 4 fonts from each of the different families. Say, for example, you choose one font from serif, one font from sans serif, then one font from cursive, then another one from monospace, and so on. Okay, and you should choose those fonts which look similar. Say, for example, if you choose Times New Roman in serif, then you should check for font in sans serif which looks like Times New Roman. Similarly, you should look for fonts in cursive which looks like Times New Roman. Okay, so you should choose identical fonts in each of the family and you should list. This is very, very important. Why? Because fonts are rendered locally and we don't know which browser, which operating system client is going to use. Okay, if our visitor uses Windows, he will be having different set of fonts. If user uses Linux operating system, then again there is a different types of fonts. Okay, so we should take care of all that. We don't have control over the infrastructure, or we don't have the control over the system which our client will be using. So that's why the guideline is that specify multiple fonts separated by a comma. But when we are specifying multiple fonts, select one font from each of these families. So if you follow this guideline, let our visitor use any operating system, any browser, it doesn't matter to us. It will be rendered. Okay, and our content will be displayed properly. The next is accessibility needs for visually impaired people. Now, there are many people who are visually impaired. For those people, we can't use small font like, say, Times New Roman 11 or Arial 10, Arial 9. We can't use such fonts. So for those people, you should have a separate section. Okay, when you click on, or when anybody clicks, or the person who is visually impaired clicks on that link, the visual appearance of the web page must change to suit the requirements of visually impaired. For example, with respect to fonts, if the person is visually impaired and if he clicks on the accessibility link, maybe through voice also you can do it. In that case, the font's sizes should be significantly increased so that he should be able to read, or he will be able to read it without any problems. So there is a separate section for that. That is known as WAI ARIA. So ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Application. Okay, so if you set these properties in your HTML, then your content, so font size gets increased. Okay, instead of 10, it may be now 20 or 30, so that visually impaired person can read your content without any problems. So this is how you can reach more people. Okay, in today's era, reaching more people is very, very important. That's why we should consider these guidelines. Okay, if you don't take the care of visually impaired people, then that means you are losing those many customers. So that's why you should consider this factor also whenever you are designing a web page. The next is colors. Colors is very, very important. So you should be using different types of colors, and there are different ways of including colors. So if you use names of the colors, say for example, red, yellow, green, right? Or bright green, dark red, etc., etc. So these are the names of the colors. So you can use names of the colors and specify the colors. But when you specify the names of the colors, you have very less options. If you want more options, then you should go to RGB. So here in RGB, you are going to specify 3 colors, red, green, and blue, and value starts from 0 and ends at 255. And you can count the, you can calculate the permutation and combination of these colors between the values of 0 to 255 for each color. So that will give you more number of colors compared to the named colors. The next is the hexadecimal colors. So hexadecimal colors will give you the widest choice of colors. So it is more options. It gives you more options compared to the RGB, and it is most widely used method of specifying a color. So if you want to verify, then you will just visit any web page, right click there and click on view source and start scanning the code there, and you will find there that colors have been mentioned in hexadecimal form. Okay. Then next comes the point of sensitivity. Note here, this is very important, especially nowadays. I cannot use just because I cannot use any color just because I like it or I want to use it. Similarly, for client. So client also cannot use any color just because he likes it or he wishes to use it. Of course, he will be having a say in the requirements, but you should also see that it is not hurting any community's feelings or religious beliefs, or it is not violating any rules or laws. Okay, let's say for example, uh, if you are designing a religious website or website for any religious organization, so their colors of choices you need to be very careful. So you can't just make use of any color. So you should be very careful. Then next, with respect to community also. Okay, so whenever you are using the colors, say for example, if you see the movements in USA now, right? So Black Lives Matter movement, so it has become more sensitive color now. So you should be start using the black color, or start associating black color with some sections of the website. Whenever you want to use it, you should be very careful. Okay, if it is hurting the uh, beliefs of a particular organization, then you should stop associating or stop using that color with some sections. Similarly, in different countries or different races have different beliefs with respect to colors. So you should see for whom you are designing a website, what are their beliefs, right? And design or choose the colors accordingly. And whenever you are choosing the colors, don't choose too many colors. Say for example, if I have a website, then I cannot make use of, technically you can use, but you should not make use of more than 2 or 3 colors. Okay, so restrict yourself max to 3 colors. Don't use much colors. And whenever you are choosing colors, you should choose appropriate color combinations. So there is a color family also, right? So particular color matches with particular color only. So you should choose appropriate color combination. If you don't choose appropriate color combination, then your website, it will badly affect the appearance of the website. It will badly affect the look and feel of the website. Plus, it will not also be eye friendly. Okay, let's say for example, if you see the some flags, you have both blue and red color. Okay, it may look fine on flag, but it will look bad on web page. Okay, if I put blue text on a red background or vice versa, it will look bad. Even when I use it in combination, it will not work. Okay, the next is retina ready. So when I say retina ready, you should use high resolution colors. Okay, so that means when I select a color, it should not strain my eyes. Okay, my eyes should have pleasing effect when I select the colors. The next is colors based on businesses or organizations. Now note here that every color has got some meaning. Say for example, if you select a blue color is generally used whenever you want to say that we are an organization with high trust. You can believe us. So if you want to declare that indirectly, then you should use the blue color. Similarly, if you want to say that we are aggressive in business and it should attract more customers, then red can be used. Okay, so every color has got some meaning. So it depends on what kind of application you are building. So similarly, if you want to build products related to uh, females or girls, okay, especially beauty products, then you can choose a pink color. So that's a standard. Okay, so generally these standards are followed. And similarly, you want to build websites for corporates, then you can use bright colors, okay, or light colors. Then if you want to use if you want to develop websites for academic institutions, then generally the colors are dark. Say for example, visit if you visit our college website, then you find that it's blue. If you visit MIT website, then if you find that it's dark brown. Okay, so if you visit Carnegie Mellon, then you find that again it's brown or a dark red. So it depends on what kind of business you are doing, what kind of organization it is. So based on that, you can choose the colors. The next is images. Okay. Now, whenever you are selecting the image or whenever you are uh, inserting the image, of course, the image should be written already, but it should not be too heavy to load. Okay. For example, I can uh, include my profile photo or profile picture on my web page. But in that case, it should be written already. That means the picture should be clearly visible. At the same time, it should be of less size. That is, it should be in terms of kbs, kilobytes. Say up to 100 kb or max 200 kb. Okay, but if you include the image as it is, original image, which is of 3 MB size or 4 MB size, then that page will take more time to load. Okay. Say, for example, if you visit our CSC department faculty page, so there are around 40 faculties, and 40 faculty means I need to include 40 faculty images. If we consider size of image, even if it is 1 MB, okay, that means the size of the web page will become 40 MB. And just imagine if you have a low internet connection or slow internet connection, then it will never load. Okay, even if you are having fast internet connection, still it will take time to load. But instead, if it is in terms of kbs, then if you are having a slow internet connection, it will eventually load. Okay, at least it will start loading the content at the top. So when you are busy in browsing the content at the top, it will go on loading the content at the bottom. So image this should be responsive. That is again you should set appropriate units while setting width and height. You should not specify these specific values such as whatever may be the device size, it is 100 pixels into 100 pixels. No, never. So instead you should use the unit called as W. Okay, there is you can say 1W or 1.5W or 2W. So W is the unit which is used whenever you want to make image responsive. So it is based on the aspect ratio of the screen. So depending on the screen size, automatically it will adjust the width and height of the image. So if you don't use the unit W, then your image will not be responsive. Then to reduce the size of the image, the simple thing what you can do is just take your image. Maybe you might have clicked it using a mobile phone. So just reopen it in Paint, okay, and just resave it. So when you resave it, there will be some loss in the pixel and it will reduce the size of the image. Similarly, one more approach what you can do is just send those images over WhatsApp. Okay, so when you send the images over WhatsApp, its size will be reduced. Then you can download those pictures on your local laptop and start using them. So these are the simple ways using these tools or using the technology we can reduce the image size. The next is using alternate text. Using alternate text is very important. That is because we have different types of browsers. We have textual browsers as well as we have graphical browsers. In graphical browsers also, visibility of images must be enabled. If it is disabled, then our browser will not be able to display the image. So in that case, it should display some text. Say for example, there is a college building image. Okay, if it is not visible due to some configuration settings, or if that browser doesn't support the display of image, then in that place it should display the text at college building. Similarly, if it's a library building, okay, in case image fails to load, then in that place it should display the text saying that it's a library building. Okay, so at least it will give some information about the image, what that image is and what is the purpose of that image or what it does exactly. Okay, so using alternate text is very important. So in case of slow internet connection, you can provide the alternate information for the reader, okay, who will be able to interpret the content easily. So next is browsers. As I have already told you, the officially browsers are known as user agents. There are different types of browsers. One is textual browser and second one is graphical browser. Example for textual browser is Lynx, LYNX. Okay, LYNX is the textual browser which is available on Linux platform. If you have installed Linux on your machine, just type LYNX, it will open your textual browser. So as the name suggests, it's a textual browser. You will not be able to see any graphics there, any images, any video, any audio. Okay, so in that case it will just show the URL. So in such browsers, displaying of alternate text is very useful. Then next is graphical browsers. We all have used graphical browsers, right? Your Google Chrome, Safari, Opera, Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, all these are graphical browsers. So in graphical browsers, there's a GUI. So using GUI, you will be able to access the information, browse the content, right? So in graphical browsers, if options by default, image visibility option is enabled, so you don't have to worry about it. It will be able to render the content properly. Then next is browser versions. Now note here that you should know different browsers and you should also know different browser versions. Okay, whenever you are testing your system, okay, you should test it on multiple browsers. Okay, if you design your website today, you should test it on Firefox, you should test it on Internet Explorer, you should check it on Google Chrome. See how it looks. Is it displaying correctly? Okay, is it displaying all the content correctly? If it is not displaying the content correctly, then you should modify it. Note here that each browser has got its own default settings. Okay, if something is missing, then it will apply the default settings to the content. Okay, so let's say for example, if you want to make your web application browser friendly or browser independent application, So let the client use any browser, but my application will work fine. So in that case, if you want to design such a web application or a website, then there are CSS properties. You should make use of those properties. Okay. Say for example, if you want to uh, give command to the Firefox browser, then there is a CSS property prefix called as mosquit. You should be prefixing this mosquit CSS property to all the CSS property so that it works fine on your Mozilla Firefox. Similarly, if you want to say that it should work fine on Safari and Chrome, then there is a CSS property prefix known as WebKit. Okay, so you should prefix the WebKit. And for Internet Explorer, by default, many things will work. There are no specific prefixes for Internet Explorer, but if you are using other browsers, then you should be prefixing these keywords. It is very important because, again, as I have already told you, that we don't have any control over the uh, client. So our client may use Firefox, or he may use Internet Explorer, or he may use Chrome. Okay, if I ask anybody why you are using Chrome or why you are using Firefox, he just says, or he just gives a simple answer, just because I like it. Okay, so we don't have any control over it. Okay, so if your application doesn't work in one of the browsers, then you are losing the customers of that particular browser. Okay, so that's why your web application or website must be browser independent. Okay, you should use appropriate CSS property prefixes which makes it work in that particular browser. And note here that whenever you are using browser or whenever you are writing code, make sure that it is lower version compatible. That means even if your visitor uses lower versions of the browsers, it should work. Okay, because whenever new versions of web browsers are released, there are some specific features which are added. Okay, those features will create a problem in other browsers if it is not supported. Even it will create a problem in case of lower versions of browsers. Okay, say for example Ajax. If you want to implement Ajax, then there are some criteria like your browser version should be from this onwards. Say it will not work on Internet Explorer version 4 or 5. Okay, so in that case you should have higher versions of the browsers. So you should see that you should ensure that whatever browser you are using, it supports the technology you are implementing and it is taking care of wider audience. And layouts is very important. Okay, so basically in layouts what we do is we fix different kinds of, or we place different kinds of content in different section of the web page. Say for example, in header section we put different content, in footer section we put different content, on left hand side we put different content, on right hand side we put different content, in the middle of the page we put different content. Okay, in olden days tables have been used for creating the layouts. Okay, that is because adjusting the content itself was challenging, and tables are the one of the nicest ways to enforce the strict layout. Okay, but nowadays your mobile phones are more popular. So if you are having two applications, one is mobile site and desktop site, so obviously your mobile site will be more popular. So one survey says that 85% of the people use mobile for browsing, whereas only 15% of the people use desktop for browsing. Okay, so this survey is the indication to us that whatever web page we are going to design, it must be mobile friendly. If it is not mobile friendly, then you are losing customers, especially the younger generation. Okay, then the solution is to use div layers. Okay, div is the tag in HTML which is used to create different layers, and these layers can be overlapping. Okay, and these can be arranged wherever we want. So basically, when we create a layer, we are creating a block. And this block can be placed anywhere. It can be placed at the top, bottom, or left, or right. And depending on the screen size, they will adjust themselves. Okay. Let's say, for example, we have a two column architecture. On laptop, all both these columns are visible at a time. But if I'm viewing the website on my mobile phone, then these columns are visible one after the other. Okay, that means one column, the right column, has shifted down. Okay, it has come down below the first block. So such things you can do it using div layers. And to make your layout responsive, okay, you should be using Bootstrap here. Okay, Bootstrap is the technology which makes or which ensures that whatever web page you design, whatever website you design, it works fine on various devices with different screen sizes. Okay, it will work fine on your, if you use Bootstrap, it will work fine on your mobile phone, it will work fine on your laptop, it will work fine on your tablet, okay, or even phablet. So you need not have to worry much about it. Only thing is just put Bootstrap there. Then your tables must also be responsive. Okay, if your tables are not responsive, then then the complete content of the table will not be visible in a single screen. Okay, note here that it's a very important content guideline that whenever you are fitting the content, it should be visible in a single screen. You should never scroll horizontally. Okay, scrolling vertically is fine, but scrolling horizontally, you should never do it because it is very embarrassing. Okay, but there are some designers who will design websites which will be having horizontal navigation. In that case, that's a different story because that's a design aspect. Okay, but that's not the common thing. Okay, so whenever you are designing a website, you should ensure that your tables must be responsive. It should be mobile friendly. Okay, entire content should be resized, and you should be able to view the content without problems. So next is very important, content design. Now note here that there is a first statement which I have stated, that design for scanning, not for reading. Note here that nobody has time to read the content on the website. Okay, so you only visualize yourself. Let's say, for example, you are viewing your timeline on Facebook, or you are viewing your timeline on LinkedIn or Twitter. What you do, you just go on scrolling it. If you find something interesting, you stop there and you see the content, right? So that means what? Whenever you are scrolling, not much content is of your interest. Okay, you are stopping at that content which looks attractive, which is getting your attention, right? Which is grabbing your attention, or if you find it interesting. So you should be designing the content in such a way that it looks interesting to the viewers. So you should not make use of too much text in the website. Okay, I cannot have 10 paragraphs. Nobody is going to read 10 paragraphs. Okay, so similarly, if you have a table and if it has 10 columns, nobody is going to read it. Okay, so displaying that content is waste of time, waste of resource. Okay, so that's why it says that design for scanning. You are just scanning the content, you are just looking at the content, you are not reading it. If you find something interesting, then only you will read it. So you should keep this point in your mind and design the layout of the website, design the content of the website. Okay, that means less text, more images. Okay, even it says that one picture is equal to 1,000 words. Okay, so nobody has time to read 1,000 words. It will take a lot of time to read 1,000 words, as well as they can just have a glance at one image, okay, in just few seconds. Okay. Now take advantage of conventions. Now note here that there are some conventions whenever you are designing a website. Say for example, if you want to display that something has gone wrong, then you can use the red color there. And if you want to indicate that yes, it is successful, then you can say that yes, you can display it in green color. So these are the conventions. And one more convention is that you should use same font style everywhere in your web page or in your website. You should have uniform font style. You should have uniform formatting styles, right? Just like your IEEE paper format, right? It has some guidelines for writing a paragraph, some guidelines for writing the caption for image, caption for table, right? Then similarly, it has guidelines for specifying the font size for headings, subheadings, right? So same things you should follow here. Okay, there are no specific things here. There is no body, or w3.org will not specify that you should use this font only, this font size only. Okay, so you can discuss with your client and finalize what font to use, what font size to use for header, what font size to use for paragraph, what font size to use for uh, subheadings, what fonts color to use, right? So once you finalize it, you should stick to it. Don't deviate from it. Okay. And whenever you're designing, you design the layout also. It should give the feeling to the user that yes, you are on the same page. You are not moved to the website of some other organization. Okay. So if you deviate from the standards which you have defined, then it will give the user a different feeling that he has navigated to some other websites. So that should not happen. Then similarly, break pages up into clearly defined areas. So as we have seen one of the images, whenever we are planning the website design, web page design, we should see what content we are having. Okay. And what content to place where to place my slider, where to place my photo gallery, where to place my video, where to place my main navigation, where to place my sub navigation. Is it on the left hand side? Is it on the right hand side? Okay. So all these things have to be planned properly, and as per that, you should design the content. Then make it obvious what's clickable. Okay. If something is clickable, then you should specify the user that see if you this section is clickable. So how you can do it? Either there are multiple ways. One is change the colors, underline. Then when user is navigating the content, when he places the mouse cursor, it changes the cursor icon. This is fine for desktop application or laptop application because he has some mouse pointer over there, but it creates a problem in the mobile application. So we don't have any cursor or a mouse pointer there. It is just touch and go, right? So in that case, you should have a different strategy there, right? So your visual appearance should be such that it should indicate the user that see this section is clickable. If you click on it, it will give you the requested resource. Okay. Then next is eliminate distractions. Note here that too much of animation will actually destroy the look and feel of the web page. Okay. So I will give you the best example. Okay. Visit google.com. Okay. Are you seeing any animations there? Are you seeing any unwanted content there? No, it just serves the purpose. It's a search engine. So it has a very simple interface, right? Search box and search button. That's the basic functionality, right? You don't find much colors. You don't find any animations there, right? Nothing is visible. Okay. In between, they are displaying the doodle, but they have limited area for that. Okay. So that's the best example. So stick to the purpose. Don't use unnecessary animations. Okay. So that's very, very important guideline. Then format content to support scanning. So as I have already told you that you should design for scanning, not for reading, and you should have more visual blocks than text blocks. Now this is important again. Push important content to the left side. Why? Because naturally when we see the computer screen, okay, when we see the computer screen, we actually look at top left corner. That is our natural eyes perception or view. Okay, naturally our eyes sees at top left corner. So you should be pushing most important content or the highlight of the website on the left hand side. Then distractions you can put on the right hand side. Say for example, if there is a scrolling message, some notification, Okay, that you can put on the right hand side. So here what happens is our natural view, our natural eye view takes us to the most important content without much efforts. Okay, by default it will happen. Then we also have some other content where we want to make sure that user visits that part. So in that case, put some distractions there, some animation. So what my eye sees now, my eye sees that here is something else which is going on. So I should say it. So now I'll look at the right side. But if you instead put distraction on the left side and important content on the right side, then there is a possibility that I may not look at the content on the right side. Okay. So this is again an important guideline. The next is page should load in less than 10 seconds. Okay, this is again a study which says that if your website doesn't load in less than 10 seconds, then it will then the user will move to the next website. Okay, you have lost so many customers again. Okay, so your homepage should be attractive, plus it should load faster. Okay, that's why you should be using tools to reduce the size of the image, or you should not have too many JavaScript files. There is a concept called as lazy loading. Okay, in lazy loading what happens is there are some JavaScript files, and when you link the JavaScript files you should not be specifying them at the top, you should be specifying them at the bottom. So what happens when you specify the JavaScript at the top? If you specify JavaScript at the top and if there is a problem in loading that particular JavaScript file, then your page will never load. Okay, or it will take a lot of time to load. So you obviously your viewer will move to the next website. But instead, if you follow the lazy loading, then instead of placing JavaScript links at the top. Of course, there are few compulsory JavaScript files that you need to put at the top. You have to put it. But there are some additional JavaScript files or custom JavaScript files which are not so important. You put them at the bottom. So in this case, what happens is user will see some content at least within some time. While he is busy in surfing that content, at the bottom, your JavaScript file will be loaded and you will be able to do, or your viewer will be able to do the task whatever you intend to do him. Okay, so follow the lazy loading guideline, put the JavaScript, that is unwanted JavaScript files or not so important JavaScript files at the end of the page. In navigation, whenever you are designing menus, note here that the user should get the information in 2 clicks. Okay, there should not be too many sub menus. Okay, menu, inside that one more menu, inside that one more menu. No. Okay, in just 2 clicks or max 3 clicks, sometimes user should get the required information. So less is more here. So in less clicks you should get more information. The next is internal hyperlink. Okay, so note here that sometimes our pages will be very long. So in that case, what you can do is very long in the sense, say for example, there's a speaker list, right? We are displaying the biography of all speakers on the single page, and there are 100 speakers. Okay, so what we can do is on the right hand side we can have a navigation. Okay, a small menu. So it's an internal hyperlink. I'm not moving from the page. Instead, I'm going to create different sections for each speaker. When I click on the name of a particular speaker, it will directly take me to that speaker's profile. Okay. Similarly, if the page is long, you might have observed it with respect to our e-commerce websites, right? So it's going to display around 10 products or maybe 50 products sometimes, and you want to go to the top. What those people do is they provide a small link at the right bottom called as top. So you need not have to scroll up, or you need not have to click page up button. Okay, just click on top, it will directly take you to the top section. Okay, so internal hyperlinking, you can improve the navigation. The next is external hyperlink. External hyperlink is common. Okay, when you click on any link, it will take you to the appropriate resource, but you can also go to particular section in the different file. That is possible. Okay, so here you are combining both internal as well as external hyperlinking. Okay, so even this is useful. The next, avoid too much scrolling. Okay, unless it is the application which demands it, or if the scrolling is suitable for it. For example, if you are a social networking website like Facebook, or professional networking like LinkedIn, right? It's a timeline. So there the scrolling is justified. But if it is just a normal page, then including too much text, including too much content on the web page is not good. Okay. So if you design content for scanning, not for reading, then you can naturally avoid scrolling. Okay. So you can avoid scrolling by designing for scanning. Okay. This is very, very important point here. Next, testing. So testing is very, very important. Why you need to do testing is you should in fact put more efforts in testing. You should put more time in testing the application. Okay. That is because if you don't test your application properly, if it doesn't work on particular platform, then again you are going to lose the customers. It will affect the business. Okay. First, as a developer, you should define the development environment and test all the features of your application on your machine. Okay. Note here that developer environments are different, testing environments are different, and deployment environments are different. The developer environment is the environment on which you are developing your application. For example, your operating system, your browser version, or different types of browser or editors, etc. And testing environment is you are going to test your application on different machines, maybe on your friend's machine, okay, or on college system. When you are testing, you should test it on different browsers. Okay, because I have already told you each browser has got its own default settings. Similarly, each browser has got its different versions. Okay, so even if it is the same browser, it may not work because of version requirements. So you should test it on different browsers on different machines, right? Then after this, you should be also test it on deployment environment. Deployment environment is nothing but your client's environment. Okay, your deployment environment may be significantly different compared to your development and testing environment. Okay, your client may not be having a budget, so he may be having a low end system, so it should work fine there. So after deployment, you should provide support, right? If something is not working on his machine or her machine, you should go to your client's place and resolve all the queries. Then test on mobile device. Okay, again, in mobile device also you have different types of mobile phones. You have iOS phone, you have uh, Android phones, right? You have Microsoft phones. So you should work fine on all these devices. Okay, there is something called as progressive web applications. Using progressive web application using mean stack, that is MongoDB, Express, Angular, and Node.js, right? You can create an application which works on all devices without any problems. Okay. Then next, test on devices with different screen sizes. This is also very, very important. Okay. So if you have a wide screen laptop, and if you have developed your application on a wider screen laptop, say 15.3, it may work fine, right? But if you open the same web page on 14-inch laptop, then it may not work, or some sections may not work properly. They may not display some sections properly. So you should check for all these different screen sizes. So when I say laptop, it is not just one laptop, it is different laptops with different screen sizes, right? Different mobiles with different OSs with different screen sizes. Okay. So testing is very, very important, and it has to be done exhaustively. Then next is customization. Okay. So customization is again an important skill, and a lot of people who claim as web designers or web developers do customization. So what they do basically is they just purchase some themes, modify the content, and finish it off. Now note here that there are different concepts here. One is customizing static themes. So if your theme is HTML, okay, if your theme just consists of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, yes, you can go to appropriate sections and edit the content and finish it off. But note here that when you're customizing the theme, so to work it properly, that is, we don't want to affect its look and feel much. So in that case, based on the theme we purchase, we should prepare the content. So we should prepare the content according to the theme. This is very, very important. So if you remove some sections from the theme, so it loses its purpose. Okay, so that should not happen. Then next is converting the static themes into dynamic themes. Now let's say, for example, you have liked a HTML theme, right? You are good in backend programming, so you decided that let me purchase only the static HTML code. Now what you should be doing here is you should break the HTML code into different sections. Header section into one file, save it as header.php. Then menu sections into one file called as menu.php. Footer sections into one file called as footer.php. Then create a index.php file where you include header.php, menu.php, and footer.php file into a single file. So you are just including the file names, but the original content will be in some other files. It's just like your header files in C programming language. Okay, so this is how you can convert your static files to dynamic sites. Then in the backend, write the required PHP files, post it on web server. Your site will be ready. Then customizing CMS. So CMS stands for content management systems. So these are most widely used. So most widely used CMS is WordPress. Joomla and Drupal are also widely used. So you will get a lot of themes here. You will get free themes, paid themes. So just download the theme or purchase the theme, whichever you like. And based on the design, you should prepare the content and put it. Again, if you don't have content for particular section, you have to remove it. When you remove it, when you do minimal customization, it's fine. But if you do extensive customization, then the look and feel will be badly affected. Then customizing at the code level with respect to CMS, right? In CMS, it works on themes and plugins architecture. So for each functionality, there are multiple plugins. So you can purchase the plugins if there's a feature, if it is directly available. If it is not available, then you should write your own plugin code. That is possible. Or sometimes it also happens that there are some clients requirements. For those things, you may have to go to the code level and edit the code, okay, and modify it. So that is at the code level customization. And finding appropriate content is very, very important in respect of customization, as I have already told you. And if you don't find the appropriate content, then look and feel of that theme will be badly affected. So there are two guidelines. You purchase the theme, right? So based on the theme, based on the layout, you should prepare appropriate content and put it. Otherwise, you plan the content, right? You see what content you have, then design a rough layout on a paper, then go for the theme which suits your layout. And this is the last slide I'm going to speak. That's on hosting. So to host any website, you need a domain name which can be purchased on any sites like GoDaddy or HostGator. So my survey says that GoDaddy offers better services for domain names, but for hosting space, it is HostGator is mostly preferred. But apart from that, you can go for some other hosting services also. Say, for example, if you want to host it on cloud, then you can also go for DigitalOcean, which will give you 100 credits for 2 months. Or you can also go for Google Cloud, right? So Google Cloud for Education gives 50 credits for students for 1 year, right? Also Quick Labs credits of 200 for 1 year. So you need your college ID, right? So apply there. They will grant you the cloud credits, and you can host your website there for 1 year. Okay. Then whenever you are hosting the website, security is very, very important. If your website is compromising the security, then the entire effort of designing, planning content, everything will be of no use, right? Actually, the security budget is more compared to our development budget now. Okay. Now, when we say hosting, there are free hosting and paid hosting. Then there are different types of hosting also. There's a cloud hosting, then there is a shared hosting, open source hosting, then server hosting. So cheapest is shared hosting and cloud hosting. So in cloud hosting, you can select minimal plan, or as I've already suggested, you can go for DigitalOcean or uh, Google Cloud. Okay. Then when we say open source hosting, you can host your website on GitHub. So hosting the website on GitHub is very simple. You will find lots of tutorials on YouTube. Just search for how you can host website on GitHub. You will find lot of videos. You can refer any of the videos and you will be able to host it. So to do that, you should first have the GitHub account. Okay, creating GitHub account is very important. So recently I have been certified as GitHub certified campus advisor. So I will be able to extend my services with respect to GitHub to entire GIT. So no problems at all. We can create the organization there. We can create repositories. We can track our submissions. We can link Google Classroom to GitHub. So many things are possible now. So when you're hosting on the GitHub, note here that you can host only static websites. So you cannot host dynamic websites which has a server file or which has database. Okay, so you will be able to host only the static websites. That is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Angular, React. So whatever these technologies are there, you will be able to host it. So if you want themes are also available. If you want to go for professional development, then there are themes like Jekyll themes, right? You can buy a theme and you can host it on GitHub. Okay. Then on for GitHub hosting, you need GitHub account and you also need GitHub repository. Then once you create a repository, you should upload all your files there, and you should link it to the domain. Now note here that you should be using GitHub pages there, right? And configure all the pages, right? Then done. Your site will be ready to view. But only note here that you will get the extension domain name .github.io. So if you consider my website, so my website is gcdeshpande.github.io. So you will get github.io extension by default. Okay. But unlike others like Hostinger, you don't have any limits. Okay. You will be able to host any number of pages. Okay. No problems at all. Okay. So I'm stopping here. I have covered most of the important concepts and guidelines. So I thank IEEE Student Branch GIT, student coordinators, staff coordinators, Abhishek sir. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. If there are any questions, you can ask me.
So we have one question from Manohar Zhalki. He says, can you share the links used in slides?
Yeah, I'll upload my slides on my website. So gcdeshpande.github.io. So on this site, I will upload my slides by evening. Okay, so you can visit this site and download.
Okay, sir.
So how do we host websites that have databases? Can't be done on GitHub. So you need to go for private hosting such as HostGator or GoDaddy or any other private hosting provider. So any other questions?
So there is one question from Venkatesh Dongadi. He asked,
Yeah.
how do we host websites that have databases? You said
Yeah, I have.
GitHub.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not possible on GitHub. You need to go for private hosting like HostGator or GoDaddy or some other hosting provider. You can also host it on DigitalOcean or Google Cloud. Yeah, any other question?
Sir Rohan asks, name some free hosting services.
Yeah, DigitalOcean you can go, right? DigitalOcean, then Google Cloud, right? Google Cloud provides 1 year free, right? You can host your website for 1 year. And as a student, right? As a GIT student, you will get 50 credits for Google Cloud. And if you're a student, you will get 100 clouds for DigitalOcean. And you will be having lots of control over those platforms. Host website that has database using cPanel. Yes, Amit, yes. If you are having cPanel, you can host website that has database. Yes, any other questions?
I think that's it, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us with the information. I request the chairman of IEEE Exicom, Mr. Prasad Kadam, to kindly give the word of thanks.
Yeah, respected Professor Gajendra Deshpande and our branch counselor, Professor Abhishek Deshmukh, and my dear friends, I deem it is a great honor to propose the vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this seminar such a resounding success. First of all, I would like to thank our distinguished speaker, Professor Gajendra Deshpande, for making excellent presentations and making this seminar interesting and meaningful. I would also like to thank our beloved branch counselor, Professor Abhishek Deshmukh, for his moral support and guidance. I'm happy to express word of thanks to all our staff members who have made this seminar a grand success. During this seminar, we discussed about various aspects on how to make the website professional, how to make it look professional. I would also like to thank the coordinators of all for making this event a grand success. I would also like to thank the Exicom volunteers who have been the backbones of this webinar. Thank you so much. Finally, I would like to thank the wonderful students who turned up in such a great numbers, not only from our department but also from the other departments of our college. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Once again, I would like to thank for your cordial cooperation. Thank you so much on behalf of IEEE JIT.
Thank you, Prasad. Thank you, all the participants, for attending the webinar. Hope you'll have gained a lot of knowledge and will further see you to implement this knowledge to the website competition. And all the best to everybody.
Yes, all the best to everyone. Please form teams. Minimum is 2, maximum 3. And please do participate in this website contest in large numbers. The cash prize is rupees 3,000 rupees. Thank you so much. See you all.
Shreyas Charkandi, yes, it is necessary to have a team of minimum 2 members or maximum of 3.